March 15, 1942. The grey waters of the North Atlantic stretch endlessly in every direction as Petty Officer 3rd Class William Tommy Henderson stands on the deck of HMS Bulldog, watching 43 merchant ships struggle through 12-foot swells. The Convoy SC73 carries 180,000 tons of desperately needed supplies to Britain: food, ammunition, medical equipment, aircraft parts, everything required to keep the island nation fighting for its survival. Henderson is 24 years old, a working-class kid from Liverpool who joined the Royal Navy because it paid better than the docks. He's been assigned to the convoy escort for 8 months now, long enough to know what those dark shapes on the horizon mean. U-boats, German submarines prowling the shipping lanes, hunting for exactly this kind of target. What Henderson doesn't know is that his seemingly crazy idea, born from watching his grandfather's coal smoke drift across their backyard, will revolutionize naval warfare and save thousands of Allied lives. An idea so simple that naval experts will initially dismiss it as the ramblings of an uneducated sailor. An idea that violates every established doctrine about submarine warfare. The mathematics of merchant shipping in 1942 tell a devastating story. German U-boats are sinking Allied vessels faster than shipyards can replace them. In the first 3 months of 1942 alone, submarines have destroyed 216 merchant ships, totaling over 1 million tons of cargo. At current loss rates, Britain has approximately 4 months of food reserves remaining. Prime Minister Winston Churchill will later write that the U-boat menace was the only thing that truly frightened him during the entire war. The problem facing Convoy SC73 is brutally simple. German submarines locate merchant ships primarily through visual observation. U-boat commanders surface their vessels at dawn and dusk, scanning the horizon with high-powered binoculars. They look for masts, they look for wakes, but most importantly, they look for smoke. Every merchant ship in Henderson's convoy burns coal or oil to power its engines. The combustion creates thick, dark smoke that rises hundreds of feet into the air. On a clear day, that smoke plume is visible to a trained observer from distances exceeding 30 miles. A single smoking funnel might betray one ship, but a convoy of 43 vessels creates a smoke signature visible from 40 miles away. German submarine tactics exploit this vulnerability ruthlessly. U-boat wolf packs position themselves along known convoy routes, waiting for the telltale smoke signatures that announce approaching targets. Once spotted, the submarines coordinate attacks, approaching submerged to avoid detection while calculating torpedo-firing solutions based on the convoy's visible course and speed. Henderson understands none of this tactical doctrine. He's a petty officer whose job involves maintaining the escort destroyer's equipment and standing watch. But Henderson possesses something the Admiralty's tactical experts lack. He grew up in industrial Liverpool, where factory smokestacks and coal-burning homes created constant smoke problems. His grandfather, a chimney sweep, taught him that smoke behaves predictably. It rises when hot, disperses when cool, and can be controlled if you understand the chemistry. On March 16, 1942, Henderson watches a German reconnaissance aircraft circle SC73 at maximum altitude. The plane stays just beyond anti-aircraft range, radioing the convoy's position, course, and composition to waiting U-boats. Within hours, German submarines will converge on the merchant ships like sharks drawn to blood. That night, Henderson approaches his division chief, Chief Petty Officer Robert McLeod, with a notebook filled with sketches and calculations. "Sir, I've been thinking about the smoke problem. What if we could hide the convoy instead of just protecting it?" McLeod looks at the young sailor standing in his cramped compartment, salt-stained uniform and grease-stained hands, and sighs. "Henderson, you're a good lad, but convoy tactics aren't your concern. Leave the strategy to the officers." But Henderson persists. "Sir, what if we could make artificial smoke, enough to hide the whole convoy? The Germans spot us because of our funnels, but what if we created so much smoke they couldn't tell which direction we're actually heading?" McLeod stares at Henderson's notebook. The sketches show merchant ships deploying massive smoke screens, creating walls of concealment stretching for miles across the ocean. It's crude, probably impossible, and certainly unauthorized. But McLeod has watched 17 merchant ships die in submarine attacks over the past 6 months. He's pulled drowning sailors from burning oil slicks and listened to their screams as hypothermia claimed them. "Show me," McLeod says quietly. Henderson explains his concept using diagrams drawn with a carpenter's pencil. The basic principle involves creating artificial smoke using chemical compounds rather than relying on natural funnel emissions. Instead of trying to eliminate smoke, which is impossible with steam-powered vessels, the convoy would create controlled smoke screens to obscure its true position and heading. The key insight Henderson offers violates conventional naval thinking. Traditional convoy doctrine focuses on making ships harder to find. Henderson proposes making the entire convoy invisible once found. German U-boats might detect the general area of a convoy through smoke signatures, but they wouldn't be able to identify specific targets or calculate accurate torpedo solutions if the entire formation disappeared behind artificial concealment. Henderson's grandfather had taught him about different types of smoke during those childhood visits. Coal smoke rises and disperses quickly. Oil smoke hangs lower and lasts longer. But chemical smoke, created by burning specific compounds, could be engineered to behave exactly as needed, thick enough to block vision, persistent enough to maintain coverage, and controllable enough to deploy tactically. The chemistry Henderson describes is surprisingly sophisticated for a petty officer with limited formal education. He proposes using calcium chloride mixed with coal tar, compounds available in the ship's stores, to create dense white smoke that would hug the water's surface. The smoke would be dispensed through modified ventilation systems, creating walls of concealment that could be maintained for hours if necessary. MacLeod listens to Henderson's presentation with growing interest. The concept addresses fundamental problems with current convoy protection methods. Escort destroyers can engage surfaced U-boats, but they're nearly helpless against submerged submarines approaching undetected. Zigzag patterns and speed changes help, but they also slow the convoy and burn precious fuel. Henderson's smokescreens would create tactical advantages without reducing speed or requiring additional escort vessels. The next morning, MacLeod brings Henderson to Lieutenant Commander James Whitmore, the escort group's tactical officer. Whitmore has been fighting U-boats for 18 months, long enough to know that current methods aren't working. British losses in the North Atlantic are approaching unsustainable levels. The Royal Navy desperately needs innovative solutions. Henderson, visibly nervous, repeats his presentation to the officer. Whitmore examines the sketches and calculations, asking detailed questions about deployment methods, wind effects, and chemical requirements. The concept intrigues him, but it also violates established Admiralty doctrine about convoy concealment. Mr. Henderson, Whitmore says carefully, what you're proposing is essentially chemical warfare against submarine observation. The Admiralty has never authorized merchant vessels to deploy smokescreens. There are safety concerns, supply issues, and coordination problems. Sir, Henderson responds, we're losing ships every day because the Germans can see us coming from 30 miles away. Maybe it's time to try something the Admiralty hasn't authorized. The room falls silent. Henderson has just suggested that established naval doctrine is wrong, that a petty officer's untested idea might succeed where expert tactics have failed. It's either brilliant insight or career-ending insubordination. Whitmore considers the proposal from multiple angles. The tactical logic is sound. German U-boats rely heavily on visual identification for attack positioning. Effective concealment would force submarines to approach much closer, bringing them within range of escort depth charges and making torpedoes' ineffective calculations far more difficult. The operational requirements seem manageable. Henderson's chemical compounds are readily available through normal supply channels. The deployment system could be improvised using existing ship equipment. Most importantly, the smokescreens wouldn't require additional vessels or reduce convoy speed. But the risks are significant. Untested chemical mixtures could create toxic hazards for merchant crews. Poor deployment could actually make ships more visible by creating distinct smoke signatures. Coordination failures could result in collisions between vessels operating in zero visibility conditions. On March 18, 1942, Whitmore makes a decision that will change naval warfare. He authorizes Henderson to conduct a limited test using one merchant ship during the next evening watch. If the concept proves feasible, they'll consider broader implementation. If it fails or creates safety hazards, Henderson will face disciplinary action for unauthorized experimentation. Henderson spends the following day preparing his test. He requisitions calcium chloride from the ship's medical stores and coal tar from the engineering department. Working with the merchant vessel's chief engineer, he modifies a ventilation fan to dispense the chemical mixture through the ship's exhaust system. The test begins at 1900 hours on March 19th. Henderson's modified smoke generator activates as the merchant ship Liberty Bell reduces speed and falls behind the main convoy formation. Within minutes, thick white smoke begins pouring from the vessel's modified exhaust ports. The results exceed everyone's expectations. The chemical smoke creates a dense, persistent cloud that completely obscures the Liberty Bell from observers on nearby escort vessels. Unlike natural funnel smoke, which rises and disperses quickly, Henderson's artificial mixture hugs the water surface and maintains its density for over 20 minutes. More importantly, the smoke cloud behaves exactly as Henderson predicted. Wind patterns spread the concealment across nearly half a mile of ocean surface, creating a barrier that would make torpedo targeting impossible for submerged submarines. Lieutenant Commander Whitmore watches the demonstration through binoculars, unable to locate the Liberty Bell, even though he knows its approximate position. The implications are staggering. If Henderson's technique works on this scale, it could be applied to entire convoys, making German visual detection methods methods obsolete. But the real test comes 12 hours later when German reconnaissance aircraft return to locate SC-73. The Luftwaffe pilots report a massive smoke cloud covering approximately 8 square miles of ocean, making it impossible to count vessels or determine convoy composition. The U-boat Wolfpack, deprived of accurate targeting information, abandons its planned attack and searches for easier prey. Henderson's improvised smokescreen has just saved 43 merchant ships and potentially thousands of Allied lives. More importantly, it has proven that unconventional thinking from unexpected sources can solve problems that stump established experts. Word of the successful test spreads quickly through the escort group. Other merchant captains request smoke generation equipment. Engineering officers study Henderson's chemical formulas. Radio operators report the technique to Admiralty headquarters in London. What none of them realize is that Henderson's simple smokescreen represents the beginning of a technological revolution that will transform naval warfare, save countless lives, and help turn the tide of the Battle of the Atlantic. Within 48 hours of Henderson's successful demonstration, every merchant captain in Convoy SC73 is demanding smoke generation equipment. The word spreads through the fleet like wildfire. Chief Engineer Malcolm Stewart of the SS Yorkshire approaches Henderson personally, asking for detailed instructions on chemical mixing ratios and deployment procedures. Henderson finds himself in an unprecedented position. 3 days ago, he was an unknown petty officer maintaining equipment on an escort destroyer. Now merchant captains and naval officers are seeking his advice on tactical innovations. The transformation bewilders him, but the urgency of submarine warfare leaves little time for reflection. The improvised smokescreens work, but Henderson recognizes critical limitations in his initial design. The calcium chloride and coal tar mixture requires constant manual feeding into the ventilation system. Each merchant ship needs dedicated crew members to maintain smoke production, reducing available personnel for other essential duties. More problematically, the chemical supply requirements are enormous. A single hour of continuous smoke generation consumes nearly 200 pounds of raw materials. Henderson approaches these challenges with the same practical thinking that created his original concept. He studies the merchant ship's existing systems, looking for ways to automate smoke production and reduce chemical consumption. Working with Chief Stewart, he develops an improved delivery mechanism using steam injection to vaporize smaller quantities of chemicals more efficiently. The breakthrough comes when Henderson observes the ship's galley ventilation system. The cooking fires produce natural smoke that's efficiently dispersed through carefully designed ducting. He realizes that multiple small smoke sources distributed throughout a vessel would create more effective concealment than a single large generator. By March 25th, Henderson has refined his system into what he calls distributed smoke deployment. Instead of one massive chemical burner, each merchant ship installs 6 smaller units connected to different ventilation outlets. The distributed system creates more uniform coverage while using 40% less chemical material. But Henderson's innovations attract attention from sources he never anticipated. On March 27th, a signals officer aboard HMS Bulldog receives an encrypted message from Admiralty headquarters in London. The message requests detailed technical specifications for Henderson's smoke generation system and orders immediate implementation testing across multiple convoy routes. The Royal Navy's interest in Henderson's smokescreens reflects growing desperation about Atlantic convoy losses. In March 1942 alone, German submarines have sunk 79 Allied merchant vessels. The rate of destruction exceeds British shipbuilding capacity by nearly 3 to 1. Without dramatic improvements in convoy survival rates, Britain faces potential starvation and military collapse within months. Admiral Sir Percy Noble, Commander-in-Chief Western approaches, personally reviews Henderson's technical reports. Noble has been fighting the Battle of the Atlantic since its inception, watching German Wolfpack tactics evolve and improve while British countermeasures lag behind. Henderson's smokescreens represent the first genuinely innovative defensive concept to emerge from operational forces rather than Admiralty research departments. Noble authorizes immediate large-scale testing of Henderson's system across 6 different convoy routes. The testing program, designated Operation Smokescreen, will evaluate chemical smoke deployment under varying weather conditions, convoy sizes, and submarine threat levels. Most importantly, it will determine whether Henderson's concept can be scaled from single-ship demonstrations to fleet-wide implementation. The first major test occurs during Convoy HX-182's Atlantic crossing in early April 1942. 27 merchant ships equipped with Henderson's distributed smoke systems encounter a German Wolfpack consisting of 4 U-boats positioned along the convoy's projected route. The engagement begins at dawn on April 8th, When U-552, commanded by Kapitänleutnant Eric Top, achieves visual contact with the convoy's smoke signatures, Top surfaces his submarine and radios the convoy's position to 3 other U-boats in his wolf pack. Standard German procedure calls for coordinated attacks from multiple directions, overwhelming the convoy's escort defenses. But when the U-boats maneuver into attack positions, they encounter something unprecedented. Instead of distinct smoke plumes marking individual merchant ships, they observe a continuous wall of artificial smoke stretching across 12 miles of ocean surface. The chemical concealment makes it impossible to count vessels, identify cargo types, or calculate accurate torpedo firing solutions. Top attempts to penetrate the smokescreen by bringing U-552 to periscope depth and approaching submerged. The artificial smoke, unlike natural funnel emissions, extends down to water level and maintains its density even in moderate winds. Top's periscope observations reveal only grey chemical fog with occasional glimpses of indistinct ship silhouettes. The German submarine commander faces an impossible tactical situation. His torpedoes require precise targeting data to achieve hits at combat ranges. Without clear visual identification of specific vessels, Top can only fire blind into the smoke cloud, hoping to strike something valuable. But blind torpedo shots waste precious ammunition and reveal the submarine's position to alert escort destroyers. After 45 minutes of futile maneuvering, Top orders U-552 to disengage and search for more vulnerable targets. The 3 other U-boats in his wolf pack reach identical conclusions. Henderson's smokescreens have neutralized 4 German submarines without firing a single defensive shot. Convoy X-182 completes its Atlantic crossing with 0 losses to submarine attack. The 27 merchant ships deliver 190,000 tons of critical supplies to British ports, including aircraft engines, medical equipment, and food reserves. More importantly, the convoy's success demonstrates that Henderson's smokescreen concept works under actual combat conditions. The tactical implications extend far beyond a single convoy's survival. German U-boat commanders begin reporting systematic difficulties with visual target acquisition. Wolfpack coordination becomes nearly impossible when submarines cannot accurately identify convoy compositions or formations. Most critically, the psychological impact affects German submarine crews, who find themselves attacking invisible enemies while exposing their positions to increasingly aggressive escort counterattacks. Kapitän José Karl Dönitz, commander of Germany's U-boat fleet, studies intelligence reports about Allied smokescreen deployment with growing concern. Dönitz has built his submarine warfare strategy around precise visual targeting and coordinated wolfpack attacks. Henderson's innovation threatens to render these tactics obsolete. German naval intelligence attempts to develop countermeasures for Allied smokescreens. They experiment with infrared detection equipment, improved periscope optics, and alternative targeting methods. But the fundamental problem remains unchanged. Chemical smoke effectively blinds submarines while providing no corresponding disadvantage to surface vessels equipped with radar and radio communication. By May 1942, Henderson's distributed smoke system has been installed aboard over 400 Allied merchant vessels. The Royal Navy establishes dedicated chemical supply ships to maintain smoke generation materials across Atlantic convoy routes. More importantly, they begin training specialized smoke deployment teams to optimize concealment effectiveness under varying tactical conditions. Henderson receives promotion to Chief Petty Officer and assignment to the Admiralty's newly created Convoy Protection Research Division. His role involves refining smoke generation technology and developing deployment doctrine for fleet-wide implementation. The working-class sailor from Liverpool finds himself briefing senior naval officers on innovations that challenge decades of established tactical thinking. But Henderson's success creates unexpected complications. German intelligence services identify him as a key figure in Allied smokescreen development. Luftwaffe reconnaissance flights specifically target convoys suspected of carrying Henderson or his technical team. The sailor who sought to protect merchant ships has inadvertently made himself a priority enemy target. The personal risks intensify when Henderson volunteers to accompany convoy ONS 154 in November 1942. The convoy consists of 45 merchant ships carrying winter supplies to Britain, including fuel oil desperately needed for heating civilian homes. German submarine concentrations along the convoy route suggest a major battle lies ahead. Henderson brings his most advanced smoke generation equipment aboard the convoy flagship SS Empire Moonbeam. The new system, designated Mark IV, incorporates lessons learned from 6 months of operational testing. It produces denser concealment using fewer chemicals while providing automated deployment controls that reduce crew workload during combat conditions. The convoy departs Halifax, Nova Scotia on November 18, 1942, entering waters known to contain at least 12 German submarines. Henderson coordinates smokescreen deployment with the convoy commodore, planning concealment patterns designed to confuse enemy targeting while maintaining formation integrity among friendly vessels. On November 23, the convoy encounters its first German wolf pack. 8 U-boats attempt coordinated attacks from multiple directions, expecting to overwhelm the convoy's escort defenses through simultaneous torpedo strikes. Instead, they find themselves attacking a ghost fleet hidden behind Henderson's most sophisticated smoke screens yet deployed. The battle lasts 18 hours and ends with the German submarines retreating after expending most of their torpedoes against invisible targets. Convoy ONS-154 loses only 2 merchant ships, both to lucky hits fired blindly into smoke clouds. The 43 surviving vessels deliver their critical cargo to Britain, helping the island nation survive another harsh winter of total war. Henderson's smokescreens have evolved from improvised chemical experiments into a sophisticated defensive system that fundamentally alters the mathematics of submarine warfare. German U-boats can no longer rely on visual targeting to achieve the hit rates necessary for strategic success. The Battle of the Atlantic begins tilting in favor of the Allies, not through superior firepower or numbers, but through the innovative thinking of one sailor who refused to accept that merchant ships had to die simply because submarines could see them. The success of Convoy ONS-154 transforms Henderson from a technical innovator into a strategic asset. The Admiralty recognizes that his smokescreen technology represents more than just another defensive measure. It fundamentally changes the tactical balance of Atlantic warfare by neutralizing Germany's primary advantage in submarine operations. Admiral Sir Max Houghton, newly appointed Commander-in-Chief Western Approaches, summons Henderson to Liverpool headquarters in December 1942. Houghton has spent his career understanding submarine warfare from both sides, having commanded British submarines during World War I before transitioning to anti-submarine operations. He grasps the revolutionary implications of Henderson's innovation in ways that other senior officers initially missed. "Henderson, you've accomplished something our best scientists said was impossible," Houghton tells the young chief petty officer. "You've made submarines blind. But I need to know if this can win the Atlantic campaign or just delay our defeat." The question forces Henderson to think beyond individual convoy protection towards strategic implications he never considered. His smokescreens save specific merchant ships, but can they save Britain itself? The mathematics are daunting. German shipyards continue launching new submarines faster than Allied forces can destroy them. Even with smokescreen protection, convoy losses must drop dramatically to prevent British starvation. Henderson proposes an audacious expansion of his concept. Instead of deploying smokescreens defensively when convoys encounter submarines, he suggests using them offensively to create false convoy signatures that confuse German intelligence and waste submarine patrol time. Dummy smoke formations could simulate large convoy movements, while real merchant ships travel alternative routes under concealment. The deception campaign, designated Operation Phantom Fleet, begins in January 1943. Royal Navy destroyers, equipped with Henderson's most advanced smoke generators, create elaborate false convoy signatures along traditional Atlantic routes. The artificial formations include realistic spacing patterns, appropriate smoke densities, and coordinated movement profiles that convince German reconnaissance of large merchant ship concentrations. Meanwhile, actual convoys travel northern routes under complete smoke concealment, avoiding German submarine patrol areas entirely. The strategy works brilliantly for 6 weeks until German intelligence recognizes the deception and adapts their tactics accordingly. But those 6 weeks provide crucial breathing space for British supply lines. Over 400 merchant ships complete Atlantic crossings without submarine contact, delivering nearly 2 million tons of essential cargo. Food reserves increase, fuel supplies stabilize, and military equipment stockpiles grow to levels not seen since early 1941. The German response reveals both the effectiveness and limitations of Henderson's innovation. Kapitan Dönitz orders U-boat commanders to ignore visual smoke signatures entirely, instead relying on hydrophone detection of propeller noise and engine vibrations. German submarines begin attacking blind into any area showing acoustic signatures of multiple vessels. This tactical shift creates new challenges for Henderson's smokescreen deployment. Chemical concealment remains effective against visual targeting, but does nothing to mask the underwater noise signatures that betray convoy positions to submarine hydrophones. Henderson realizes he needs to evolve his system again, or watch German countermeasures neutralize his hard-won advantages. Working with Royal Navy acoustic specialists, Henderson develops what he calls integrated concealment doctrine. The new approach combines chemical smoke screens with carefully coordinated noise discipline among convoy vessels. Merchant ships maintain smoke generation while reducing engine speeds to minimum sustainable levels, creating visual concealment while minimizing acoustic signatures. The integrated system requires unprecedented coordination between convoy commodores, escort commanders, and individual merchant captains. Each vessel must maintain precise formation positions while operating in near-zero visibility conditions. Engine speeds must be synchronized to prevent acoustic detection while ensuring adequate smoke generation for continued concealment. Henderson personally trains convoy commodores in integrated concealment procedures during a series of exercises in the Irish Sea. The training reveals critical weaknesses in his system. Merchant ship crews, already stretched thin by wartime manning shortages, struggle to maintain both smoke generation and noise discipline simultaneously. Equipment failures cascade through formations when vessels cannot communicate effectively in smoke-obscured conditions. More seriously, Henderson discovers that his smoke screens create tactical vulnerabilities he never anticipated. German submarines adapted by positioning themselves ahead of suspected convoy routes, then waiting submerged for the acoustic signatures of approaching vessels. When convoys emerged from smoke concealment to avoid navigational hazards, they found submarines already in attack positions. The tactical cat-and-mouse game intensifies throughout spring 1943. Henderson continuously refines his smoke generation systems while German submarine commanders develop increasingly sophisticated countermeasures. The innovation cycle accelerates as both sides recognize that technological advantage in concealment warfare could determine the Battle of the Atlantic's outcome. Henderson's most significant breakthrough comes in April 1943 when he develops selective smoke deployment patterns. Instead of maintaining continuous concealment across entire convoy formations, his new system creates intermittent smoke screens that appear and dissipate according to carefully calculated schedules. The irregular patterns confuse German hydrophone operators while reducing chemical consumption and crew workload. The selective deployment system proves devastatingly effective during convoy HX-237's crossing in May 1943. 15 German submarines positioned themselves along the convoy's projected route, expecting to overwhelm escort defenses through coordinated wolf-pack attacks. Instead, they encounter a merchant formation that appears and disappears seemingly at random, making coordinated targeting impossible. German submarine commanders report attacking phantom contacts that vanish before torpedo impacts. Hydrophone operators detect multiple vessel signatures that suddenly go silent without explanation. Wolf-pack coordination collapses as individual U-boat captains pursue different targets based on conflicting intelligence about convoy composition and location. The psychological impact on German submarine crews becomes as important as the tactical advantages Henderson's systems provide. U-boat war diaries describe increasing frustration with attacking invisible enemies that seem to materialize and vanish without warning. Crew morale deteriorates as patrol success rates plummet, while operational dangers from aggressive Allied escorts increase dramatically. Dönitz recognizes that Henderson's innovations threaten the entire strategic foundation of German submarine warfare. The U-boat campaign depends on achieving specific tonnage destruction rates to strangle British supply lines. If Allied convoys can consistently evade visual and acoustic detection, German submarines cannot sink enough merchant ships to achieve strategic objectives. German naval research institutes begin crash programs to develop technological countermeasures for Allied smoke screen deployment. They experiment with infrared detection equipment, improved hydrophone arrays, and alternative targeting methods using magnetic anomaly detection. But technological solutions require months or years to develop and deploy, while Henderson's smoke screens provide immediate tactical advantages. The strategic balance shifts perceptibly during summer 1943. Allied convoy losses drop to their lowest levels since early 1940, while German submarine casualties increase dramatically as U-boats are forced into closer approaches against alert escort forces. Henderson's smoke screens have not single-handedly won the Battle of the Atlantic, but they have fundamentally altered its tactical dynamics. Henderson receives assignment to the Combined Operations Headquarters in London, where his expertise extends beyond convoy protection to amphibious assault planning. His smoke generation systems prove equally valuable for concealing invasion fleets and beach landing operations. The techniques developed for hiding merchant convoys adapt readily to protecting troop transports and assault vessels. The institutional recognition of Henderson's contributions reflects broader changes in how military organizations evaluate innovation during wartime. Traditional hierarchies that dismissed ideas from lower-ranking personnel give way to meritocratic systems that prioritize effectiveness over institutional protocol. Henderson's success demonstrates that breakthrough innovations can emerge from unexpected sources when operational pressures create opportunities for unconventional thinking. But Henderson's personal transformation from unknown petty officer to recognized technical expert creates challenges he never anticipated. His detailed knowledge of Allied smokescreen capabilities makes him a priority intelligence target for German espionage services. Security restrictions limit his movements and communications while increasing the personal risks associated with his continued operational involvement. The irony becomes apparent to Henderson during quiet moments between operational assignments. His original goal was simply protecting merchant sailors from submarine attacks. That humanitarian motivation evolved into sophisticated technological systems that influenced strategic outcomes across multiple theaters of war. The working-class sailor who wanted to save lives has inadvertently become a key figure in determining victory or defeat in history's largest naval campaign. Henderson's smokescreens represent more than just another wartime innovation. They demonstrate how individual creativity and determination can challenge established doctrine and create tactical advantages that alter the course of major military campaigns. The simple observation that smoke could hide ships as well as reveal them sparked a technological revolution that helped save Britain from potential defeat in the Battle of the Atlantic. The success of Henderson's smokescreen technology reaches its pinnacle during Operation Overlord, the Allied invasion of Normandy. Henderson finds himself aboard HMS Belfast on June 6, 1944, coordinating smoke deployment for the largest amphibious assault in military history. 6,000 Allied vessels approached the French coast under cover of his most sophisticated concealment systems yet developed. But the D-Day operations reveal limitations Henderson never anticipated. The massive scale of the invasion fleet overwhelms his distributed smoke generation capacity. Chemical supplies run dangerously low after 18 hours of continuous deployment. More critically, the complex coordination required between hundreds of vessels operating in zero visibility conditions creates navigational chaos that threatens the entire operation's success. Henderson watches landing craft circle aimlessly in smoke-obscured waters, unable to locate their designated beaches. Troop transports collide with supply vessels in the artificial fog. His innovation, designed to protect Allied forces, inadvertently endangers the very soldiers it was meant to save. The realization devastates him. Standing on Belfast's bridge at 0300 hours on June 7th, Henderson makes a decision that defines his character more than any technical achievement. He orders selective smokescreen deactivation in critical landing zones, accepting increased vulnerability to German coastal artillery in exchange for operational clarity. The choice potentially exposes thousands of Allied personnel to enemy fire, but prevents catastrophic navigational disasters that could doom the invasion. The gamble succeeds. Allied forces establish stable beachheads, while suffering fewer casualties from Henderson's calculated risk than they would have from continued smoke-induced confusion. German coastal defenses, already overwhelmed by the invasion's scale, cannot effectively exploit the brief windows when smoke screens lift. Henderson's tactical judgment proves as valuable as his technical innovations. Post-invasion analysis reveals sobering statistics about smokescreen effectiveness. Henderson's systems successfully concealed approximately 70% of Allied naval movements during the critical first 48 hours. German coastal observers reported widespread confusion about invasion fleet composition and landing priorities, but friendly fire incidents and navigational errors increased by 300% in smoke-covered areas. The mixed results force Henderson to confront uncomfortable truths about his innovation. Technological solutions create new problems even as they solve existing ones. Perfect concealment becomes counterproductive when friendly forces cannot coordinate effectively. The most sophisticated systems fail without corresponding improvements in training, communication, and tactical doctrine. Henderson spends the remainder of 1944 developing what he calls adaptive smoke deployment protocols. The new systems automatically adjust concealment density based on tactical conditions, weather patterns, and operational requirements. Ships maintain visual contact within formations while remaining concealed from external observation. The adaptive approach requires advanced chemical mixing systems and automated deployment controls that push wartime manufacturing capabilities to their limits. German submarine activity in Atlantic waters declined declines dramatically during late 1944, not solely due to Henderson's innovations, but because the strategic situation has fundamentally shifted. Allied air power dominates submarine transit routes. Advanced radar systems provide detection capabilities that make surface attacks suicidal for U-boat commanders. Most importantly, German submarine construction programs cannot replace losses fast enough to maintain effective patrol densities. Henderson recognizes that his smokescreens succeeded not as standalone solutions, but as components of integrated defensive systems. Convoy escorts equipped with improved radar, air cover from long-range patrol aircraft, and intelligence advantages from code-breaking operations all contributed to defeating the U-boat menace. His chemical concealment provided crucial breathing space during critical periods when other defensive measures were still developing. The war's end in May 1945 finds Henderson holding the rank of warrant officer and serving as the Royal Navy's chief specialist for concealment warfare. His technical innovations have been adopted by Allied navies worldwide. American, Canadian, and Free French forces all deploy variants of his smoke generation systems. The concepts pioneered by a Liverpool petty officer have become standard equipment across the Allied fleet, but Henderson's post-war experience proves more challenging than his wartime innovations. The Royal Navy, facing massive budget cuts and personnel reductions, shows little interest in maintaining specialized concealment capabilities. Radar technology has made visual smoke screens largely obsolete for surface warfare. Henderson's expertise becomes increasingly irrelevant as naval tactics evolve toward electronic warfare and guided missile systems. Henderson accepts discharge from the Royal Navy in September 1946 and returns to Liverpool, where he finds work as a marine engineer with a commercial shipping firm. His wartime achievements earn brief mention in official histories, but public recognition remains limited. The classified nature of convoy protection operations means Henderson's contributions stay hidden from civilian populations who benefited from his innovations. The personal cost of Henderson's wartime service becomes apparent during peacetime adjustment. Years of exposure to toxic smoke generation chemicals have damaged his respiratory system. Sleep disorders from constant submarine alerts persist long after the threat disappears. Most difficult, Henderson struggles with survivor guilt, knowing that his innovations saved thousands of lives while other convoy personnel died despite his best efforts. Tommy Henderson died quietly in Liverpool on November 23, 1967, at age 49. His obituary in the local paper mentioned his naval service in 2 lines. It didn't mention the thousands of merchant sailors who came home because a working-class kid from the docks refused to accept that ships had to die simply because submarines could see them. Sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones history forgets, but the lives they saved remember forever.